Would you dare to live in a place so wealthy that about 1 in every 15 households is made up of millionaires? Yet the permit alone to own a car can cost more than $100,000. That place is Singapore, a country smaller than New York City, with no oil reserves, no vast farmland, and almost no choice but to import nearly everything, from sand and food to even drinking water. Yet somehow this small nation became one of the richest, cleanest, and safest cities in the world. But that perfection does not come free. Here, you can be fined for drinking water on the train, chewing gum cannot be sold, and people live among streets with almost no crime, but also with very little personal space left. If you enjoy stories that help you see a country beyond its travel photos, hit subscribe, like this video, and comment below to tell me, could you live in a place that feels this perfectly controlled? Number 10. When the entire city runs like a machine. Step out of almost any metro station, and the first thing you feel is not noise, but speed. Singaporeans are often described as the fastest walkers in the world. In a 2007 study, researchers quietly timed pedestrians in different cities. Here, people covered a distance of 18 meters in just over 10 seconds. Not everyone is rushing. They are simply used to moving at that rhythm, fast, precise, and with almost no wasted step. What feels strange is that inside all that speed, the crowd remains almost unbelievably calm. 6 million people live together on an island of only about 720 square kilometers, making it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. But instead of pushing and shoving, they line up behind painted marks, wait for passengers inside the train to step out before entering, and sit inside the carriage in near total silence. The disorder you might expect in a place this crowded almost never appears. The reason lies in the way the whole city is designed. Singapore did not build daily life around cars, but around people. Its train and bus network is so dense that fast walking is no longer a strange habit, but a way to keep pace with the city's operating rhythm. When the weather turns hot or sudden rain begins to fall, life slips underground, moving through air-conditioned tunnels, connected shopping malls, and covered walkways. That is why many streets above ground may look surprisingly quiet. While just below them, Singapore keeps moving without pause. Even the way people use their phones reveals this pace of life. On average, each person here spends about 7 hours a day online, almost the length of a full work shift. At some pedestrian crossings, lights are even built into the pavement to alert people who are looking down at their phones. But this is not necessarily coldness or indifference. In Singaporean culture, not disturbing strangers can also be seen as a form of politeness. Number 9. Singapore, the country left behind that turned itself into a miracle. Singapore means Lion City in Sanskrit. Legend says that many centuries ago, a prince stepped onto the island, saw a strange animal, and believed it was a lion. But the truth is deeply ironic. Lions have never lived here. That is why the merlion, half fish and half lion, seems to stand guard over a country that began with a mistaken belief. The stranger truths behind it go even further. Singapore is one of only 3 city-states that still exist today. It is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, smaller than New York City, yet its entire population lives in an urban environment. Singapore is also not just one island, but a nation made up of 63 islands. The land is almost completely flat. Bukit Timah Hill, its highest natural point, is only about 165 meters high. Most of the territory sits less than 15 meters above sea level. On that low stretch of land, skyscrapers still rise, but their height is limited to about 280 meters, because the sky must also remain open for aircraft. From there comes one big question. How could a place with little land, little water, and almost no natural resources rise to have almost everything? The answer began in 1965, when Singapore was separated from the Federation of Malaysia and forced into independence. Most countries fight to win independence, but Singapore received it in tears. At that time, 70% of the population lived in poverty. Half of the people could not read, and many were crowded into slums. There was no army, no natural resources, and not enough fresh water. So Singapore chose a path that was cold but practical. It opened its doors to foreign businesses, offered 10 years of tax exemption, built factories before investors arrived, turned the Jurong swamps into an industrial zone, and transformed its seaport into an economic machine. In the 1970s, it moved away from cheap labor and stepped into higher-value industries. Within just one generation, the island once left behind had moved from the third world to the first world. Number 8. Singapore, the land of millionaires, where a car becomes a luxury item. So how wealthy has this island become? In Singapore, many numbers sound almost unreal. By 2026, GDP per capita is close to $99,000, placing it among the 5 highest levels in the world and the highest in Asia. But an average number still hides part of the truth. About 1 in every 15 adults here is a millionaire in US dollar terms. The city has more than 240,000 millionaires and 30 billionaires, enough to make it one of the wealthiest urban centers on the planet. What makes this even harder to believe is that this wealth did not come from oil, farmland, or natural resources. Singapore sells the thing it has that is most valuable: its location. More than 37,000 international companies have placed their Asian headquarters here. Its seaport is among the busiest in the world, while its financial center ranks among the leading ones. Even the way Singapore pays its leaders shows that same practical mindset. The Prime Minister of Singapore receives about 2.2 million US dollars a year, the highest salary among national leaders. That is the price the country chooses to pay for honesty. But keep that image of wealth in mind, because in this land of millionaires, a car can cost as much as a home. To own a car in Singapore, you do not simply buy the vehicle. First, you have to buy the right to own it through a certificate of entitlement, which is valid for 10 years. In 2026, the certificate for a large car had risen to more than 100,000 US dollars, just for the document itself. The car is paid for after that. The reason is very simple. Singapore does not have enough land to keep building more roads. So the country limits demand from the start, turning cars into luxury items so people choose the train instead. The same logic also appears in housing. A private apartment can reach around $1.5 million, while many public housing flats also pass the $1 million mark when resold. Compared with a median income of about 5,800 Singapore dollars per month, you begin to understand that in Singapore, being rich does not always mean life is easy. Number 7. The rules that shock the entire world. In Singapore, money is sometimes the smallest price you have to pay. What surprises many visitors even more is the law. The list of fines can sound like a joke until you step into that system yourself. Eating or drinking on the metro can cost you $500. Littering, forgetting to flush a public toilet, feeding pigeons, or crossing the street illegally can all make you pay. As of 2026, adults who use e-cigarettes can also be fined $700. Then comes the most famous ban of all: chewing gum. Many people think chewing gum is illegal, but what is actually banned is selling and importing it. This rule began in 1992 after chewing gum was stuck onto metro door sensors and disrupted the system. For a country that treats time as a valuable resource, that kind of problem could not be ignored. Some rules sound almost unreal. Certain elevators have been fitted with urine detection devices. People who litter may be forced to wear a bright vest and clean public spaces, so public shame does what a fine cannot. Caning is still a legal punishment, and drug trafficking above the legal threshold can lead to the death penalty. And that is the trade-off. In 2016, Singapore recorded 135 days with no reported cases of robbery, snatch theft, or home break-ins. People can walk outside at 3 in the morning, and many shops do not need to lock away their goods. The fines that seem funny at first are part of what creates that safety. But behind it is a dense network of cameras. PaulCam has about 90,000 cameras and could exceed 200,000 by 2030. They cover housing estates, parking areas, lamp posts, and have helped solve more than 5,000 cases since 2012. A taxi driver once said he did not dare pull over on an empty road to take a quick nap because he was afraid a camera would record it and a fine would follow. In this place, privacy becomes a luxury that money cannot buy back. Many people still accept it because what they receive in return is order and safety. And if you are still watching until now, perhaps this story has made you curious about Singapore in a different way. If so, hit subscribe and join us on the next journeys. Every bit of your support helps this channel keep telling stories that are more carefully made, deeper, and more worth watching. Number 6. Singapore, the country that created its own water, land, and future. Singapore has no truly large rivers, no abundant groundwater, and not much space to store rainwater. So this country did something very few places would dare to do on a national scale. It turned used water into clean water safe enough to drink again. After treatment, wastewater is purified with advanced technology until it is clean enough to return to the supply system under the name NEWater. Today, this source already meets up to 40% of demand and is expected to reach about 1/2 by 2030. Not only that, 2/3 of the island's area has been designed as one large catchment system to collect rainwater. In other words, Singapore has almost turned the entire country into a funnel. Rooftops, reservoirs, canals, and roads all become part of that survival system. The reason is clear. The water agreement with Malaysia will expire in 2061, and a country that cannot secure its own water can hardly secure its own future. With land, Singapore has done something similar. Since 1965, the island has expanded by nearly 1/4 of its area through land reclamation, mostly by using imported sand. Even waste has been turned into part of the map. Offshore lies Semakau, where a 7-kilometer seawall surrounds ash left after waste is burned. The surface is covered with soil, planted with mangroves, and slowly turns green until birds, fish, and wildlife return. It is an island born from ash, yet covered again with green life. What feels strange is that, amid all the concrete, Singapore is still one of the most remarkable green cities in the world. In the ancient forest of Bukit Timah, within only a small area, researchers have found a density of tree species so high that few places on Earth can compare. Here, water, land, and waste are not just problems. They become the materials this country uses to survive, and then to prove that even the harshest limits can be redesigned. Number 5. Everyday life behind Singapore's perfect city. Daily life in Singapore is much softer than the image of a country filled with rules, cameras, and shining towers. Inside a system designed almost to perfection, there is still a simple, familiar, and deeply human rhythm. About 80% of residents live in public housing flats under 99-year leases. In Singapore, public housing is not a place only for people with nowhere else to go. It is where almost the whole society lives, from ordinary workers to many middle-class families, in a city with almost no slums and almost no forgotten districts. The true heart of Singapore is not found on luxury rooftops, but inside hawker centers, where Chinese, Malay, and Indian dishes meet on the same table. In the middle of an expensive city, a full meal can still cost only about $4 to $8. Hawker Chan once became the first street food stall in the world to receive a Michelin star in 2016, thanks to chicken rice that cost around $2. Although it lost that star in 2021, the lines did not disappear, because for local people, the taste matters more than the title. If you want to see a Singapore that appears less often in travel photos, follow the locals to the places where they truly eat. It could be Geylang, a noisy and lively district after midnight, the place Singaporeans often mention when talking about honest local food. Or it could be the quiet northern area, where chicken farms still exist and a rare trace of countryside remains on an island that seems to be made almost entirely of concrete. Behind the image of shopping malls, rooftop pools, and luxury hotels is a much more ordinary Singapore. Void decks beneath apartment blocks, shoes placed outside front doors, morning coffee at a kopitiam, and families filling the parks on Sunday. It is these small details that give this strict city its own quiet warmth. Number 4. Chope culture and the strange habits of daily life. A small packet of tissues can say a lot about Singapore. In a crowded hawker center, you only need to place it on a table to reserve your seat, then calmly walk away to buy food. No one touches it, and no one takes that table without permission. An entire country respects a small piece of paper as if it were a sign that says the seat already belongs to someone. Singaporeans call this act Chope, a Singlish word that comes from chop, meaning to mark or stamp ownership. In a crowded city where every empty chair has value, this small ritual survives because of one simple thing: trust. Hawker culture is not only about food. It is where Chinese, Malay, Indian, and many other communities sit beside one another, order different dishes, and still share a rhythm that feels distinctly Singaporean. In 2020, UNESCO listed hawker culture as intangible cultural heritage, the first recognition of this kind for the country. It honored an everyday public space where strangers can eat shoulder to shoulder and still feel that they belong to the same city. Then comes Singlish, the local form of English that the government once tried to correct, but the people never gave up. With just a few short phrases like "can la," no need, listeners immediately know it is the voice of Singapore. It is not only a way of speaking, it is a mark of identity, a kind of everyday code that shows you belong to this place. Even keeping cats once became a very Singaporean example. For 34 years, cats were banned in public housing flats, with fines that could be very heavy. That rule was only lifted in 2024. Now, each flat can keep up to 2 cats, as long as they are microchipped and licensed. A country can design its own water supply and reclaim land from the sea, yet still take decades to decide how to manage house cats. In Singapore, if something can be brought into order, sooner or later, it will be brought into order. Number 3. Where love also has to queue for a home. In this country, a bowl of noodles may be easy to find, but a serious relationship can be far more complicated. Love here does not always begin with the question, "Will you marry me?" Sometimes it begins with something much more practical. Do you want to apply for a BTO flat? A couple may submit an application for a public housing flat under the Build-to-Order program long before a proposal happens, because the waiting time for a home can last 3 to 4 years. They are almost betting on a marriage that has not yet taken place, while many people still believe the proposal should come first. The reason is that, in Singapore, housing decides a great deal. Without a flat, many couples find it hard to think about marriage, children, or building a family. Men also have to complete 2 years of national service, enter university and their careers later, then feel they must move faster just to catch up. So the number of births continues to fall. In 2026, the fertility rate dropped to a record low at only about 0.87 children per woman, with about 27,500 babies born across the country. Cash bonuses and pro-birth campaigns are still not enough, because what young people lack is not only money, but the feeling that they still have time. That feeling has a very Singaporean name, kiasu, which means the fear of losing or the fear of being left behind. It once helped this country move forward quickly, but it has also created a quiet pressure. Children are pushed into exams from an early age, studying late into the night is considered normal, and adults work until nightfall, so they do not fall behind. A teacher may grade papers until 3 in the morning. A banker may leave the office at 11 at night. What feels painful is that many children still smile and hide their tiredness so their parents will not worry. And parents also hide their exhaustion so their children will keep trying. Many Singaporeans are still proud of kiasu because they believe that spirit helped build the country. But today, the younger generation is no longer fighting to rise the way their grandparents did. They are fighting just to avoid being left behind. Number 2. Singapore, when long hair was once seen as a national threat. In the 1970s, when Singapore was putting all its energy into building its economy, the government of Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew viewed anything that could weaken social discipline as a real danger. In that context, the hippie wave from the West was not seen as a harmless fashion trend, but as a sign of a loose, rebellious lifestyle that could easily lead to drug use. For a small country with few natural resources, trying to survive through order, hard work, and control, that kind of freedom was seen as something that could not be allowed to spread. So Singapore launched a strict anti-hippie campaign, and the most famous rule was the ban on long hair for men. The rule sounded simple, but it was enforced in an extremely rigid way. Men's hair could not cover the forehead, could not fall over the ears, and could not touch the collar of a shirt. This was not only about appearance. To the government at that time, long hair symbolized resistance and a spirit that refused to follow the discipline the country believed it needed. At Paya Lebar Airport, which received many international visitors at the time, the rule was carried out with almost no exceptions. A foreign man arriving at immigration with hair that was too long could be forced to choose on the spot: go to a prepared barber shop and cut his hair short according to Singapore's standard, or be denied entry and take the next flight out of the island nation. That hard line quickly created famous stories in the entertainment world. In 1972, the rock band Led Zeppelin was said to have cancelled its concert in Singapore because the members did not want to cut their long hair. The Bee Gees were also linked to a similar story, making this ban even more remembered as a very Singaporean detail. Looking back today, the long hair ban may sound strange, even hard to believe, but it clearly reflects the way Singapore once viewed the world. If something was seen as a threat to order, it would be controlled down to the smallest detail. Number 1. Singapore, the tourist icons of the world's most expensive island nation. To see for yourself the contradictions of Singapore, you do not need to go far from its most famous landmarks. Marina Bay Sands appears like a giant ship resting on 3 towers, with a sky park and an infinity pool looking out over the entire bay. This complex was once considered one of the most expensive standalone casino resorts ever built. Nearby, Gardens by the Bay reveals a very different Singapore. Its giant super trees glow at night, perform light shows twice every evening, and walking through the garden is completely free. Only when visitors enter the 2 cooled conservatories do they need to pay about $46. Then there is Sentosa with its entertainment attractions, Orchard Road for shopping, Chinatown, Little India, and the riverside bars of Clark Quay. Even the airport is not just a place to leave from. Changi was named the world's best airport for the 13th time in 2025, while Jewel inside it has the tallest indoor waterfall on the planet. Singapore's passport also reflects that status, as it is ranked among the most powerful in the world, opening access to 193 visa-free destinations. The practical advice is to take the metro instead of a taxi. A tourist travel pass costs about $17 a day, and eating at hawker centers will help you experience the real Singapore far more than expensive restaurants. If you spend carefully, about 95 Singapore dollars a day can be enough for a simple and well-planned trip. And there is one warning worth remembering. Do not bring e-cigarettes into Changi. The fine, or the trouble that comes with it, is certainly not the souvenir you want to take home. At night, Singapore once turned itself into the stage for the world's first Formula One night race in 2008. When the cars rush through the brightly lit streets, the whole city looks like a living electronic circuit board. Singapore leaves behind a feeling that is hard to name. This is a place where a tiny country, with almost no natural resources, transformed itself into one of the most efficient urban machines in the world. But behind the clean streets, the trains that arrive on time, the shining towers, and the almost absolute sense of safety, daily life carries a great deal of pressure. Cars become luxury items. Housing can shape the rhythm of love. Children grow up inside a race for achievement, while adults learn to live between convenience and the feeling of always being watched. After everything, Singapore is not simply a rich or modern place. It is a larger question about the price of order, safety, and success. If this video helped you see Singapore in a different way, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below to tell me, would you choose to live in a place as perfect but as pressured as Singapore? Or would you rather keep the somewhat chaotic freedom of the place where you live now?